My stepmother always acted sweet in front of others, but behind closed doors, she quietly pushed me aside and favored her own children. My dad would say I'm his biggest disappointment at 32 degrees Fahrenheit, not due to legal issues, not because I'm jobless, not because I've done something wrong, but because I lived my life my way, instead of following his plan. My father, Robert, likes things his way. Control, looks, and family devotion have always been his priorities, as long as it benefits him. When my parents divorced, I was 10. Externally, the divorce was not ugly, but my dad moved swiftly. He remarried Margaret, a mother of Ethan and Sophia, within a year. After that, everything changed. I tried hard at first. As a child, I wanted my dad to be happy. Margaret was fake sweetly lovely, overly exuberant in public, often claiming to be trying to blend the family. She hugged me too firmly and said, "I just know we're going to be best friends." However, behind closed doors, she clearly prioritized her kids. After always being involved in my life, my dad had new priorities. He became their father instead of mine. It started with tiny things, like missing my soccer games but never Ethan's, or not picking me up from school yet always being on time for Sophia's dance recital. It intensified. By 14, I was expected to babysit, help with duties they never had to do, and appear like a good big sister while they got away with everything. If I protested, my dad would sigh, like I was exhausting, and say, "They need more attention. You're older. Be mature." Margaret took a more direct approach. She called me selfish. My dad depleted my mum's college savings account. The final straw. Mum battled hard in court to get that money back, however, the harm was done. I was mad. In my last year of high school, I scarcely spoke to him. I returned only for holidays after leaving for college, which I funded myself. My relationship with him never restored. After years, I still received family function invitations, but they always felt like a chore. I could tell my dad and Margaret saw me as the problematic child who refused to play happy family. Ethan and Sophia were the golden children. It's my dad's birthday party. Margaret was planning an extravagant invite everyone we ever met party for him. Going wasn't my plan. My aunt, one of my few allies, persuaded me, "Just stop by for a while." She added, "Maybe things have changed." No, they hadn't. I sensed it when I entered that familiar, unwanted strain. Long-lost friends were there. I got polite nods instead of hearty greetings. Everyone talked around me, but no one included me. I spotted my dad laughing with old acquaintances across the room. When he saw me, his smile wavered for a moment, like he was surprised I showed up. I regretted coming. When I saw a small table at the entryway, name tags existed. Margaret said this helped people mingle at earlier occasions. It was hers. Most tags were typical. Uncle Mark, Cousin Rachel, Neighbor Tom. I spotted mine. I froze. It wasn't only my name on my tag. It mentioned something else, something stomach-turning. Staring at it, I lifted it up. From across the room, I heard a familiar laugh, Margaret's. She watched me, holding a wine glass with a grin. My chest heated as I grasped the name tag. The outcome was not what she expected. I held the name tag for a second. My brain took longer to digest what I saw. My name, but someone wrote below in smaller letters, "The Letdown." It seemed like a joke at first, an offensive joke, possibly a cousin being silly, maybe a mishap. Margaret laughed, though. She was across the room at the bar. When I looked up, she sipped wine carelessly, met my eyes, and a slow, contented grin grew across her face. I felt my pulse in my ears. Several folks observed me standing there, a few glances at me. I felt it, even if no one spoke. "This is expected. Don't cause a scene." That was almost audible. The name tag was returned to the table after a deep breath. I streamlined it to match the others. I nearly laughed. Of course, naturally, she did this. It was typical Margaret not insulting something, not obvious enough to call her out on, something subtle enough to make me look like the problem if I reacted. I should have known something like this was coming. When I entered, a hand stroked my shoulder, and I looked to my aunt, the only family member who had ever understood me. Her lips were tightly lined, and brows pulled together. She noticed the name tag. She glanced at Margaret. "Are you okay?" she whispered. I smiled tightly. "Yeah," I replied. "I'm fine." But I wasn't. I was tired. I was exhausted beyond words because it was old. This wasn't her worst act. This continued a long tradition of ensuring my place. I should have left then. I should have turned around and fled. Some part of me said, "No, this time, No. Instead, I took a big breath, straightened my shoulders, and did something I knew would surprise them. I grinned, a natural smile, like nothing had happened. Taking a glass of champagne from a passing waiter, I softly clinked it with my nail and looked toward the room, because I would give Margaret a show if she wanted one. I raised my drink slightly, felt the atmosphere move as a few folks looked my way. I hadn't reacted yet. The gentle clink of my nail against the glass was enough to grab attention. Margaret hesitated for a moment before taking another leisurely drink of wine, her eyes narrowing as if attempting to figure out what I was doing. I considered making a toast, but gave a tiny shake of my head and turned away to continue the celebration. I wouldn't let her react. Not yet. Everything was as expected at the celebration. Crowded, too polished, expensive catering, decorated with care. Margaret always went all out since everything in her life was a performance. I didn't only celebrate Dad's birthday. It was for show, about spreading the word about her ideal life. She and my father adored each other, how successful their kids were, their offspring, not me. Ethan and Sophia were already in the middle of the room, surrounded by a few relatives, nodding as Sophia talked about her wedding. And of course, Dad's paying for everything. She smiled as she twisted the huge diamond on her finger. We wanted something tasteful, a real, elegant wedding, not one of those tacky Pinterest disasters. I chuckled. Sophia was always like this, polished, rehearsed. She was self-absorbed enough to make sure everything swirled around her, without being obvious. Ethan leaned against the bar, nodding as my dad's old acquaintances congratulated him on his new position, which I knew he hadn't earned. Ethan had never worked. He was given every chance. My father quietly corrected every error. I considered walking over to join the conversation, to watch them wiggle. Before I could, my father spoke. "Ah," he said. He was approaching when I turned. He held a drink, his look neutral. "I didn't think you were going to come." I smiled, but not really. Wouldn't miss it. He nodded and looked around before staring at me. "You've been keeping busy, I hear." It existed. He politely avoided asking about my life. He always did. I nodded. "Yeah, work's been good. I bought a house last year." He raised his brow. "A house?" "Yep." Sipping his drink, he asked nothing else. One thing about my dad, whenever I did anything that prevented him from seeing me as a failure, he loathed me. Every time I did something without his money or aid, it eroded his narrative about myself. I was lost, selfish, immature. He disliked that. He liked the me he could shake his head at, the version he could pitifully describe when asked about me. He was obviously thinking of something to say, a sly dig. Margaret's voice severed the talk like a knife before he could. "Well," she remarked, standing up behind him. At least she finally did something responsible. Just then, my chest started heating up again. I went to her and saw her beaming, like she was so thrilled to see me. I recognized the look. I'd seen it 100 times. Margaret would insult you in person, and if you got offended, you were the problem. It was a joke. You were oversensitive. I should have left, should have let go, but I didn't, because everything about this night, about everything, was off. Possibly the name tag. Maybe it was because my dad seldom spoke to me before ignoring me. Maybe it was the fact that the room was full of individuals who were never my relatives. Whatever. I was done. I tilted my head at Margaret. I was going to let it go quietly, but I have to ask, whose idea was the name tag? I saw a little spark on her face. "Oh, come on," she laughed. "You always take things so personally." It was funny. I nodded. "Right. Hilarious." Sipping wine, she shrugged. If you spent less time being angry all the time, maybe you'd be..." I cut her off with a finger. "Actually," I answered calmly, "I think you're right." She narrowed her eyes. "About what?" "About making a joke." I turned, raising my glass. "Because now that I think about it, I have a joke too." She blinked in surprise. My father shifted awkwardly beside her. My smile was slow and comfortable. "I'd like to make a toast." Suddenly, the room quieted, not all at once, not now, as inquisitive individuals looked at me. Talk slowed, because people adore toasts, especially surprise ones. I felt my father tighten beside me. Margaret giggled and shifted her weight to ignore me. "Oh, come on, you don't have to." I smiled and extended my hand. "No, really," I insist. With more people looking at me and whispering curiously, the room altered. Some attendees grabbed their drinks for a light-hearted toast. What was coming was unknown. Margaret's smile tightened, but she kept her cool, believing I was the same person she'd always known, the individual who took every insult, let everything go, and never fought back. My dad got more agitated. He knew me better than she. He tightened his glass grip and looked at me, for the first time all evening, not through me, around me, or at me. I raised my glass after letting the silence build, building anticipation. To my father, I said, almost chatty, and to Margaret, of course, because without them, I don't think I would have learned one of the most valuable lessons of my life. I sipped champagne slowly. Margaret breathed a little laugh. Oh boy, here we go. A few laughed. They assumed they were joking. They believed I was going to make fun of myself or smooth things over like usual. I grinned. No, really, I mean it, because I think we often learn the most from the people who challenge us, don't you? I looked at my dad. Dad, you always told me that family is supposed to build each other up, that we should support one another, celebrate each other's successes. My father's throat bobbed as he swallowed, strengthening his drink grasp. He didn't like the direction. I said, and I used to believe that. I really did. But then, somewhere along the way, I realized something. The room was nearly silent. Margaret's fingers were so tight around her wineglass stem that I thought it would break. I gently placed my glass on the table next to me. I realized that for some people, support only exists when you fit into the version of yourself they want you to be. That as long as you play the role they've written for you, whether it's the golden child or the black sheep, they'll keep you right where they need you. And if you step outside that role, I shook my head and exhaled hard, well, that's when they show you how they really feel. A few unpleasant crowd shifts were heard, looking at each other. Sophia awaited my father's response before determining how to feel. Ethan smiled, like this was his entertainment. Margaret smiled, but her knuckles were white. I used to think that if I just proved myself, if I worked hard, if I was successful, if I played by the rules, you'd see me differently, I murmured, softening but not slowing. But I get it now. It was never about me. It was never about what I did or didn't do. Margaret spoke, likely to interrupt me, but I stopped her. I returned to my dad. Because I was never intended to succeed, right? His expression briefly changed. I exhaled and rolled my shoulders after letting that hang. But I did. I built something for myself. I made a life that has nothing to do with this family. And let me tell you, it's been the most peaceful, fulfilling thing I've ever done. I could sense people's doubts and interest, since they didn't understand what I was saying. I was tired of letting them believe Margaret and my father's years-long construction of me. Margaret forced another laugh to recover control. Oh, come on, this is ridiculous. It's just a name tag. I looked at her. You're right, I answered effortlessly. It is, but it's also a pattern, a lifetime of moments just like this. Little digs, little jokes, little ways of reminding me that no matter what I do in your eyes, I'll always be the disappointment. Dad cleared his throat and stepped forward. That's enough. I met his gaze directly. Oh, I agree. It is enough. Before anyone could grasp what was occurring, I took up my glass again. It was slightly elevated to let my next remark settle over the room. To the last time you'll ever see me. A deafening hush. My father was tense. Margaret lowered her jaw before closing it. Somebody in the back said, "Wait, what?" I put my drink down, turned around, and headed for the door without saying a word. I felt their gaze, could feel panic setting in because this was different. One last peek back before entering. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was leaving a fight, walking toward something, toward freedom, toward peace. I was establishing a life away from my family's problems. Walking outside, I inhaled the crisp night air. It ended years earlier. I should have cut ties. No more pretense. No more attempting to please folks who never cared about me, unless I fit their ideal. My shoulders felt lighter with each mile as I drove home that night in silence. However, as I sat in my peaceful living room that evening, I wondered whether I had gone too far. Was my decision right? Was I too harsh? The next several days were filled with texts and calls. I remained silent. I avoided social media because I knew it was full of consequences. I skipped my dad's birthday party. I publicly shamed him and Margaret, his wife, my stepmother. I always thought the woman was pushing me aside for her ideal world. The family group chat was full of messages, but I kept quiet, unsure if I could handle the encounter. Finally, my aunt, the only person who understood me, texted me to check if I was okay. Not knowing what to say, I was okay. I felt better in years, but also uncertain. I told her I needed time. Not pressing. Dad called me the next morning. "Where are you?" he questioned in his usual tone, which usually made me feel like I had disappointed him. "I'm home," I said. "I'm not coming back." I only needed his silence. You can't just leave like this, he continued after a moment. This family, we have to stick together. There was no hesitation. Not if sticking together means pretending to be someone I'm not. Not anymore. It was our last conversation. I avoided all family events, weddings, birthday celebrations, and whatever else they planned. For weeks, the rest of my family either agreed with my dad and Margaret's perception of me, or pretended nothing had happened. The grapevine told me my dad was hurt, Margaret was outraged, my brother and sister disapproved of my scene. None of it disturbed me. I knew my decision was right for me. I continued living, still strong, although cutting them off was difficult. I experienced a sense of tranquility I hadn't felt in years. No family member has talked to me since then. So I ask, am I the asshole for leaving like that, for toasting and totally chopping them off? Did I overreach? Am I justified in finally sticking up for myself? I'll never please my dad. I won't be his daughter. However, I may have realized that I no longer need to be. Reddit, inform me, was my behavior inappropriate? Was this overdue? Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around.